Kia ora tātou, kei taere tonu ngā mihi kia tātou katoa. What I want to talk about today is it's about transforming research, which is really a broad sort of topic, and so 10 minutes, not very long to address this, as we've already noted. But first of all, thank you to the Royal Society for seeing fit to include me in this year's intake. And also I'd like to just acknowledge those people who, not just this year or last year, but over actually several years, have been nominating me and putting me up and doing the hard work, and in particular Dame Ann Salmon and Liz Gordon put a lot of work in behind the scenes. So thank you very much. My work is not about me, it's actually premised on sort of leading a research movement, and involves, I guess, stimulating a lot of other people's involvement in developing what I call transforming research. Two components to this. First part is that I'm interested, there's an ambiguity in that title, transforming research, and I mean both parts intentionally. That transforming research necessarily involves transforming the outcomes that the research should be, outcomes should be transforming, as well as the processes that we utilise, that the research should be culturally fit for purpose, and in that sense the processes need to be changed as well. So I'm primarily a social scientist. I study human society, people's behaviour and relationships. I'm a Māori New Zealander, Ngāti Apa, Te Aitanga Hauati, Ngāti Kahungunu and Kāti Mamoi. So a very eclectic range of iwi backgrounds, but that's all my grandparents. My career has involved a mix of teaching, research and administration over 50 years. I believe that Māori academic work necessarily requires one to be simultaneously a scholar, an activist and a transformer. Now, this is because of the problematic of persisting social, cultural and economic inequalities that disproportionately accrue to Māori as a group, and which derive from living in a colonised societal context of unequal social and economic power relations. I'm just going to read one more paragraph and then we'll ad-lib from there. But my research might be generalised as focusing mostly on the validity and protection and regeneration of Indigenous knowledge, mātauranga Māori, Māori language, knowledge and culture with respect to their continuing utility and relevance within contemporary society. I utilise a number of cross-cultural theoretical insights in my work, putting significant weight on critical theory, the sociology of knowledge, post-colonialism, and public policy application. My point regarding critical insightfulness is that if you don't accurately understand what is going wrong, our interventions are similarly unlikely to be accurate and effective. This is a major point actually about my work, and I'm going to expand on that point further. But I should also acknowledge that I often reference my academic work against or within my everyday lived experience. In this sense, organic practice and learning is often an additional factor underpinning my work. So my master's studies, just quickly, was in anthropology, University of Auckland, supervised by Professor Ann Salmon at the time. This was in the 70s, and it was an early critique, one of the first, I think, post-structural analyses, and it was a critical piece looking at the work of Claude Lévi-Strauss and the structural anthropology that was prevalent at that time. In particular, I argued that the tapu and nor structural opposition was in fact false, that the structural opposition was actually tapu and less tapu, nor described the relativity between these two positions. And when we picked up that kind of notion, it meant that we were able to understand why something was tapu in one circumstance and nor in another, the same thing. And it provided a sort of more of a utility with that sort of concept. Anyway, that was my master's research. The reason I'm mentioning that is it led me really into theoretical work. And my journey to doctoral studies was a roundabout way. I applied to do my doctorate in Māori Studies at University of Auckland. Māori Studies was a sub-department at the time of anthropology, and got turned down. So because I was trying to make a political point. So in a huff I left the university and went to training college and trained to become a teacher, and a decision that I think has been really important in my later work. But I became involved in the politics of the establishment of kura kaupapa Māori schools in Hingangaroa, and worked at Teachers College after going out teaching, and worked with Tuki Nepe and others from the Auckland Teachers College to establish the first kura kaupapa Māori model. Now the difference here was that Waititi had already begun, Ruamataha had already begun. They were the tuakana schools, if you like, but their schools were just dealing with their kohanga reo children from their own community. What we were about in the Auckland kaupapa Māori movement was a change of the system to include a responsiveness from the system to provide for immersion schooling. And so on the back of a lot of other people, not just myself, but I got to be the teacher in Āwhiranga School, one of the first models, and because two of us had jobs and one of us could afford to support the other. And so I drew the short straw and worked in the school. But it was also a really important time because it allowed me to do a lot of my on-the-ground research. So I eventually returned to University of Auckland to do my doctorate, and it's there that I formed the kaupapa Māori theorising as a transformative praxis. And what that was about really was asking a whole lot of the parents as to why they had made that choice of voting with their feet and moving out of the public schooling system and taking a punt on this new model of education and schooling. What motivated them, and why were they so strongly disposed to that kind of action? And my view was that if I could understand the key elements that were driving these parents, could we package up those elements and begin to apply it as a transforming package in other areas of Māori need? And could we apply it in health and different? And so that's really the sort of the birth of the kaupapa Māori sort of approach. So happily sort of did the thesis, and we rolled that out through different models and examples. So I'm going to flick on this, and it's just going to roll in the background as I just finish off this. It should just start.
I think it already did.
Oh yeah, and just let the please don't be. This is just so you can see the example. So it was really about turning big ideas into practice, and so things like the MY program, the Centre of Research Excellence, Ngā Pai o Te Maramatanga, all came out of some of the ideas and the thinking around this stuff. Anyway, so apply that. Eventually I went off to Canada. I took up a position in the Universitas 21 research-led universities, self-acclaimed, of course. And I worked there, and eventually UBC heard I was in Canada. They picked me up and asked me to head policy studies group at UBC. So I spent 8 years in Canada. And then when I came back to New Zealand, the kaupapa Māori elements I was looking at, and even today I'm still doing quite a bit of work with that, is that we'd sort of defaulted to what I call a taha Māori sort of version, where the intervention was just sort of positioned as just being about the language and about values, Māori cultural values. Now those are important, I'm not arguing against those, but the important ingredient that was missing was the criticality, the critical scaffolding that went alongside that, that understood the elements, the problematic of what was going wrong. And so there was this reluctance, if you like, of picking up both of these elements. So, cut to the quick, my recent work has been around writing the 5 tests for the veracity of a kaupapa Māori approach. And with that is trying to position, if you like, the criticality back into this equation, that if we want to make change that's meaningful, that we also need to understand what's going wrong. And so that's it. The rest of my work is, just checking on the time. How long have I got? Oh, 2 minutes? All right. So has been really in administration. So, you know, show a bit of form, and this is a lot of our Indigenous scholars, they show a bit of form, they get snapped up into administration, and the research is positioned somewhere else. So it's been a very hard sort of road to do the administration and to also undertake research that is going to get you on the list for the Royal Society pretty quickly. So that's why I'm pretty zealous about speaking about transformative ringa raupā, but the things that you can do that are actually impactful and are manifestations, enactments of your research. And so that's really what my work has been about. It's been about doing things and making a difference and modelling the change from the wānanga to different kura to the My program, you know, 500 Māori students in 5 years. Well, that's in Canada, it's in different countries. A lot of these ideas, as you've seen, have been spread to other international contexts where I've been fortunate enough to visit and work. That'll do.
Thank you.